What makes a person a participant in machine destruction? This is a question that history provides terribly simple answers to. Among the people lost in the hierarchy of the death camps was Paul Szczurek, an SS Unterscharfer and a guard at the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. He did not make plans for the Holocaust and did not sit at a table in Berlin next to Himmler and Hitler. But he beat prisoners to death, participated in ramp selections, beat women and children, guarded those who were taken to the gas chambers, participated in shootings and executions. Szczurek is one of thousands of perpetrators, without whom the crimes of the Third Reich would remain only on paper. His story is the story of an ordinary criminal who voluntarily became part of the largest death machine in the history of mankind. That's the kind of person we're going to talk about today. Paul Szczurek. Biography. Paul Szczurek was born on June 26, 1908 in Königsstadt, an industrial city in Upper Silesia, which at that time was part of the German Empire. Now it is the city of Chorzów in Poland. Szczurek's family belonged to the German-speaking Silesian population, known for their loyalty to German nationalism. His childhood was spent in the conditions of severe post-war devastation after the First World War and the political instability of the region, torn apart by the Polish-German confrontation. Information about his early years is rather scarce. It is known that he graduated only from elementary school and started working early, first in factories and then in the security sector. His political views were formed against the background of revanchist and nationalist sentiments, which intensified after the defeat of Germany in the war and the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. With the Nazis coming to power in 1933, Szczurek joined the National Socialist German Workers' Party NSDAP, and shortly thereafter joined the SS, where he quickly completed basic training and began serving in security units. With the outbreak of World War II and the expansion of the concentration camp system, there was a need for personnel dedicated to the ideas of Nazism and ready to obey orders without question. Paul Szczurek was one of those people. He was transferred to the SS Totenkopf Death's Head system, the specialized security units responsible for the concentration camps. In 1941, he was assigned to the Auschwitz camp, where he was promoted to the rank of Unterscharfer, a junior SS non-commissioned officer. Szczurek was not a high-ranking Nazi, but he belonged to the category of camp employees, without whom the functioning of the mass destruction system would have been impossible. His position as an ordinary warden with a reputation for brutality became part of a huge camp mechanism that destroyed thousands of lives every day. Participation in crimes. Since 1941, Paul Szczurek served in the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp, where the darkest chapter of his life began. It was during this period that the camp turned from a center of isolation and labor into a real industrial complex of death. The system of mass destruction, gas chambers, crematoria, breeding, experiments, required not only planning, but also the daily participation of dozens and then hundreds of people who were ready to obey without hesitation. Szczurek was an SS Unterscharfer, a junior non-commissioned officer, meaning he did not belong to the command staff, but had significant authority over prisoners. His main task was patrolling the perimeter of the camp, escorting prisoners, participating in roll calls, and, most importantly, guarding the ramp where trains with prisoners arrived. It was on this ramp that the selections took place. The prisoners who were considered fit for work were sent to the camp barracks, the rest to the gas chambers. According to the testimonies of the survivors, as well as the materials of the Krakow trial, Szczurek was distinguished by extreme cruelty. He didn't just follow orders, he did it with sadistic zeal. Former prisoners recalled how he beat women and children, beat them with a rifle but whipped them, and in some cases shot prisoners for the slightest violations. The memories of beatings during winter roll calls, which could last for 6 to 8 hours, are especially terrible. Szczurek personally participated in executions carried out in the presence of other prisoners as a means of intimidation. Some of his actions were recorded in the camp documentation. According to one of the complaints received from a civilian supervisor, Szczurek showed unnecessary cruelty to women, violating internal rules. However, the complaint had no consequences. The brutality at Auschwitz was not an aberration, but the norm. Moreover, the SS encouraged initiative, especially in the methods of pacification of prisoners. During the Krakow trial in 1947, dozens of former Auschwitz prisoners spoke out, who recalled specific episodes with his participation. A witness named Shimon Rosenberg, one of the few survivors of Birkenau, mentioned Szczurek in his testimony. Szczurek stood on the ramp and watched us get off the train. When one boy fell to the ground, he came up and started hitting him on the head with his boots. The boy was no more than 10 years old. He didn't scream. He just lay there and didn't move anymore. That's what former prisoner Henrik Levin said. He beat up sick prisoners who could not stand at roll call. Sometimes, after he hit them, they just fell down and didn't get up anymore. I saw him taking away women and children, pointing his finger in the direction of the gas chamber. He was smiling as if he was enjoying it, said David Goldberg, one of the survivors. When one woman tried to protect her son, he punched her in the face and then in the stomach. She lost consciousness. The child was taken away by the guards. Szczurek didn't even look at her, said Hannah Stern. In addition to physical violence, Szczurek humiliated prisoners in public, forcing them to undress, crawl on the ground, bark, and sing songs in front of the line. Szczurek once took a man to the parade ground, forced him to strip naked and jump like a frog in front of everyone. We knew that if anyone laughed, they would be killed. It was a terrible sight, recalled witness Jan Weiss. He called us dirt, spat in our faces, shouted that we should be destroyed to the last. To him, we weren't human, Israel Kleinman said. Such evidence was not isolated. Court documents indicated that Szczurek participated in the sorting of prisoners at least 30 times, and more than half of them ended up being sent to death. He also worked near crematoriums in the protection of so-called special-purpose zones, isolated areas where people were taken before being destroyed. Trial and verdict. After the surrender of Nazi Germany in May 1945, Paul Szczurek, like many other SS men, tried to escape. He escaped from the camp a few days before the arrival of Soviet troops and spent some time on the run under an assumed name. However, at the end of 1945, he was identified and arrested by the Polish authorities, and then taken to Krakow, where one of the largest trials of Auschwitz personnel took place. The Krakow trial, which began on November 24, 1947, was the first major court case in Eastern Europe involving concentration camp staff. 40 people were brought before the court, including both high-ranking and ordinary camp staff. Szczurek was among them, among Birkenau's guards. He was accused of personal involvement in the murders, torture, moral and physical humiliation of prisoners, as well as complicity in mass extermination. The indictment was based on both documents and numerous witness statements. The court considered the crimes not only as individual acts of violence, but as part of a systemic policy of genocide. Szczurek was charged: active participation in ramp selections, regular beatings and torture of prisoners, participation in public executions, special cruelty against women and children, execution of orders with personal initiative and sadism. The court noted that Szczurek took the initiative in atrocities and acted not only on orders, but also of his own free will. The indictment stated, the defendant Szczurek systematically participated in acts of violence and extermination, was particularly zealous in carrying out criminal orders and demonstrated conscious complicity in carrying out the policy of genocide. The testimony of the witnesses made a particularly strong impression. One of them, Jacob Landau, said, "When we got off the train, Szczurek was shouting and kicking people with his boots. He was beating a woman who was holding a baby. She wouldn't let go of the child, and then he hit her so that she fell, and the child flew out of her arms and hit the platform." Another witness, Zvi Frankel, described the execution episode. Szczurek took out a man suspected of sabotage and shot him without trial in front of everyone. He did it with composure. Then he told us that this awaits everyone who disobeys. The defense tried to present Szczurek as an executor of orders, emphasizing his low rank and subordinate position. However, the court did not accept this argument. It was found that he had committed acts beyond the scope of his official duties and had shown excessive cruelty. One of the judges summarized, "We are not dealing with a mechanism, but with a man who, having a choice between humanity and cruelty, chose the latter." The verdict was handed down on December 22, 1947. Paul Szczurek was found guilty of war crimes, crimes against humanity and complicity in genocide. He was sentenced to death by hanging. The execution took place on January 24, 1948, in the Krakow-Montow prison, where other Auschwitz convicts were executed at the same time. The execution took place without publicity, but with the participation of representatives of the judicial system and international observers. Szczurek showed no remorse to the last and did not apply for clemency. Paul Szczurek was not an outstanding Nazi or a commander. He was an ordinary man who chose to be an executioner. His story is a reminder of how easily ordinary people become part of a monstrous system if they allow themselves to do nothing, obey, or worse, enjoy power and fear. Today, knowing his biography, crimes, and trial, we must remember that without people like Szczurek, Auschwitz could not have existed. Responsibility for evil does not begin at the very top. It penetrates below, among those who could have refused, but preferred to participate. And now a question for you, viewer. What do you think motivates a person to choose the side of evil? Is it possible to forgive those who just followed orders? Where is the line between obedience and crime? If such topics are important to you, subscribe so that you don't miss new videos, like them, and share your opinion in the comments. Your like helps preserve historical memory.